You're listening to Nocturnal Nightmares. While the world sleeps peacefully, we open the door to what lies beneath. The stories that surface in silence, the fears that rise in the dark. These are not dreams, they are reminders. Stay with us. And don't close your eyes just yet. Fortitude has always been my anchor, but these past weeks, the tether feels frayed, tested by shadows that flicker at the edge of sight. For years, the quiet hum of the night shift at Oak Haven Apartments has been my companion. Mostly it's been a predictable rhythm. Circuit the grounds, verify the locks, scan the lot, watch the monitors flicker with their monochrome ghosts. The occasional scrounging feline or the masked banditry of a raccoon near the refuse bins marked the extent of the nocturnal drama. Until recently. Now, something else shares the darkness. Something decidedly not furred and four-legged. My evenings commence around 10. The tired sigh of my sedan's engine cuts out in the visitor bay. I trace the familiar path to the security kiosk by the main gate, exchanging the usual pleasantries with the departing guard. Murmurs about directives from Finch at management, perhaps a faulty bulb painting a stairwell in gloom. Then the solitude settles in. My duties are twofold: the passive vigilance of the monitors within the kiosk and the active patrol. My footsteps echoing through the parking area and along the perimeter. Oak Haven comprises maybe 25 units across a handful of unassuming buildings, clustered around the central asphalt expanse. A resident-only gate guards the entrance. Jagged shards of glass, like broken teeth, crown the surrounding wall. Not opulent, but secure enough, or so we believed. The shift occurred subtly, about 3 weeks past. My attention snagged on a shape lingering in a poorly lit recess of the parking lot. One overhead lamp there casts a weak, jaundiced glow, leaving a pocket of perpetual twilight near the concrete boundary wall. Several rarely disturbed vehicles squat there, beside a sprawling spider web of cracked asphalt, cradling a shallow depression that never quite surrenders its moisture. A faint, musty odor perpetually clings to that damp corner. One night, mid-patrol, I registered it. A figure clad in a hooded sweatshirt, stock still, facing the parked cars. My stride faltered. My gaze locked onto it, tracing the curve of the hood, the indistinct slope of shoulders under the thin moonlight. A pulse hammered against my ribs. I tried to project authority. "Hey, you there?" The words died in the stillness. No answer came. Raising my flashlight, the beam trembled, nerves, or just the unsteady rhythm of my own breathing. I advanced as the cone of light swept the corner, preparing to illuminate the intruder. Nothing. Emptiness. My beam frantically sliced the air, probing behind tires, beneath chassis, seeking footprints on the damp patch. Only the cool caress of a sudden breeze against my skin. My first taste of true anomaly on this job. Retreating to the kiosk, I rewound the relevant camera feed. The equipment is archaic, the images grainy, swimming in digital noise. Yet, for a brief interval, a dark smudge was undeniably present, motionless, exactly where I'd seen it. Then abruptly, it wasn't. It didn't walk or run out of frame. It simply blinked out of existence. The subsequent night, my eyes were glued to the monitors. I punctuated the vigil with more frequent patrols. 2 nights passed uneventfully. Then, on the 4th, during my 2 a.m. round, the usual nocturnal symphony. The low thrum of electrical transformers, the distant murmur of a resident's television was pierced by a faint rustle near the wall. I spun, flashlight stabbing the dark. There it stood, the hooded figure, occupying that same cursed spot. So deep was the shadow that no feature resolved itself, not the line of a jaw, nor the shape of a nose, just the cowl and the static posture. My breath hitched. "Do you live here?" The question emerged thin, wavering, silence answered. This time I didn't hesitate. 5 purposeful strides, the scrape of my soles loud on the asphalt. The figure remained. 1 more step. Gone. As if a switch had been flicked, erasing it from the scene. My flashlight beam jerked wildly, exploring the undercarriages of nearby vehicles. My heart thudded like a drum against my ribs. Radio in hand, I contemplated summoning the police, but the words formed awkwardly in my mind. Saw a hooded figure. It vanished. Dismissal felt certain. I held off. The rest of the patrol was completed on autopilot. My gaze constantly darting back to the monitors long after I returned to the kiosk. A few nights later, I cautiously queried a couple of residents. Blank stares, mostly. But Mr. Abernathy, an elderly gentleman from Building B, paused. He admitted seeing a hooded man lurking near his sedan around midnight some days prior. Thinking it a potential car thief, but wary of confrontation, he'd simply waited until morning to check his vehicle. It was untouched, no forced entry, nothing missing. Yet he was adamant about the sighting. The detail chilled me. A burglar perhaps, casing the lot? But the stillness, the vanishing, it didn't fit. Thieves move, they probe, they don't simply stand. And the disappearing act defied logic. The nights grew heavier. A knot of tension took permanent residence in my gut around midnight. My jaw ached from unconscious clenching. Every scuttling leaf, every distant car horn, every flicker of a street lamp across the road became a potential harbinger. I tried anchoring myself with practicalities. Flashlight, radio, the police option. But the patrols felt longer, fraught with an unseen weight. Perhaps a week into this unsettling new normal, the figure materialized again on the camera feed around 1:30 a.m. I was inside, observing the split-screen display. The camera covering that corner flickered. A known issue, likely a loose connection. Through the static, I saw it. The dark shape. Leaning closer, I squinted, gripping the edge of the console. Sweat pricked my temple. Zooming yielded only a coarser silhouette against the grainy backdrop. It held its position for a full minute, maybe 2. Another flicker, the image momentarily scrambled, and when it cleared, the space was empty. Snatching my flashlight, heart hammering, I burst out of the kiosk. My hurried footsteps echoed between the buildings as I approached the corner, beam slicing ahead. The air felt distinctly cooler there. The familiar scent of damp pavement mingled with faint exhaust fumes. I meticulously checked between, under, behind each vehicle. Nothing, just the stagnant puddle, reflecting the weak overhead light and my own tense face. Crouching, I scanned its surface. No ripples, no prints. I stood listening, straining for the sound of retreating steps. Silence reigned. Sleep became elusive. Daylight hours were spent behind drawn curtains, my mind replaying the encounters, wrestling with the image of that hooded presence. Was it human? Something else, splashing cold water on my face, forcing down coffee, temporary measures. By the time my shift rolled around again, the familiar knot of anxiety had tightened. A cycle of strained nights and restless days took hold. I broached the subject with Finch, the property manager, a compact man, balding, perpetually clad in a tucked-in collared shirt. I detailed the trespasser sightings, the camera evidence, my own unnerving encounters. Initial concern flickered in his eyes, but viewing the grainy recordings, he offered a dismissive headshake. Could be a glitch, Elias, or some kid playing games. His advice: keep watching. Let me know if it escalates. My request for improved lighting in that corner was met with a non-committal promise to look into it. The unspoken reluctance hanging heavy in the air. A new lamp meant expenditure, after all. Rationalization became my refuge. A stealthy individual, adept at using shadows? Possible. But how bypass the gate sensors? Scale the glass-topped walls without a sound? Plausible, perhaps, but unlikely. A nocturnal resident with peculiar habits? Why the secrecy? Why the impossible speed of disappearance? And Mr. Abernathy's corroboration couldn't be ignored. We couldn't both be inventing the identical apparition. One night, I altered my strategy. Instead of patrolling, I secreted myself in the shadows behind a large SUV near the troubled corner around midnight, intending to wait it out. The night was profoundly quiet, save for the distant wail of a siren and the low hum of the parking lot lights. An hour crawled by, my legs stiffening. Leaning against the vehicle for support, I kept watch. Then, a flicker of movement at the periphery of my vision. Near the wall, I snapped my focus. 15 feet away stood the hooded figure, facing the lot as before. The frantic percussion of my own heart seemed deafening. I attempted a slow, cautious approach. 2 steps. It must have sensed me. It vanished. I sprinted the remaining distance. Nothing. The space was vacant once more. Then a faint scuffing sound on the asphalt behind me. I whirled, flashlight beam dancing, only my own elongated shadow stretched across the pavement. The hairs on my arms prickled. Later that same night, closer to 3 a.m., back in the relative safety of the kiosk, I heard it. Distinct footsteps crunching on the gravel path flanking the building. Flashlight gripped tight, I flung open the door. The footsteps ceased instantly. I stepped out, scanning the darkness. Empty. I circled the building's edge, bathing the shrubs in light. Nothing disturbed, no rustling leaves, only the faint, pulsating glow from the parking lot lamps. Sweat beaded on my forehead, my uniform shirt clinging damply to my back. When my relief arrived at 6, I felt utterly drained, nerves frayed to breaking point. Attempts to glean insights from the daytime guards proved fruitless. They largely remained stationed at the kiosk, managing resident access, rarely venturing into the lot during daylight. One offered a jesting, "Maybe catch up on your sleep, Elias." I forced a hollow laugh, the tension remaining coiled in my shoulders. A few nights later, around 2:45 a.m., Another camera sighting. Same corner, same hooded silhouette. This time, did it seem taller? Or was it merely the angle, a trick of the poor resolution? Flashlight in hand, I hurried out, legs unsteady beneath me. Rounding the final parked car, I saw its back. A first. The hoodie appeared dark grey or perhaps black. Fabric looking worn, aged. I saw the shoulders rise and fall. A semblance of breathing. "Stop!" I yelled, the command sharp in the night air. The head turned fractionally, still obscuring any view of a face. Then it bolted. I heard, unmistakably this time, the scuff of footwear on asphalt. I gave chase for a few paces as it rounded the corner of a parked sedan. By the time I reached the vehicle's edge, mere seconds, it was gone. No conceivable way a person could have cleared the area that quickly. I stood panting, hands on my knees, staring into the empty space. The air was still. No nearby doors slammed, no gate groaned open, nothing. My flashlight beam swept the vicinity uselessly. A nauseating twist tightened my stomach. Pins and needles prickled my arms. Looking up, most apartment windows remained dark squares. A light burned here and there, but no faces watched from behind the glass. The complex felt utterly deserted, save for me and the lingering echo of impossibility. I pulled out my phone, considered calling Finch despite the hour. But what more could I convey? I retreated to the kiosk, sank into the chair, and fought to steady my breathing. As the nights bled one into the next, the presence felt more constant, even when unseen. A peculiar pressure would sometimes build in the air. The skin on my neck would prickle with the sensation of being watched. My camera checks became obsessive, my patrols more frequent, each circuit feeling longer than the last. The job, once a quiet refuge, had transformed into a nightly ordeal. Every creak of the gate, every pop of a dying bulb sent jolts through my system. One evening, around 11, Mr. Abernathy stopped by the kiosk. His voice was hushed, strained. He'd seen the hooded man again, near his car, perhaps an hour before. "Has anyone else?" he began. I confirmed his was the only formal complaint, though I admitted my own sightings, the baffling camera footage. "I don't like it, Elias," he murmured, shaking his head. "It feels wrong." I knew the feeling intimately. He retreated to his apartment, leaving me with the certainty that this wouldn't simply resolve itself. The desire to see its face, to demand an explanation, warred with a primal urge to flee whenever I got close. Nearly a month has passed since the first sighting. The figure's appearances continue, sporadic but persistent, always in that dim corner. Sometimes days pass in quiet monotony. Then it returns, standing sentinel, gazing toward the cars, occasionally drifting between them. It attempts no vandalism, makes no overt threats. It simply is. Yet its presence saturates my rounds with dread. Every attempt to anticipate it, to capture definitive proof, to confront it, has dissolved into failure. Different patrol routes, prolonged camera surveillance, hiding in wait. Nothing yields results. It manifests on its own terms, leaving no trace but the pounding in my chest and an amorphous unease that clings long after sunrise. I exist now in a state of tense expectation. What comes next? A prankster growing bolder? Something entirely outside my comprehension? All I know for certain is that each time I step into that nocturnal parking lot, my gaze instinctively seeks that shadowed corner. My grip tightens on the flashlight. My breath shortens. My hearing strains for the whisper of movement. It feels like a protracted standoff with an opponent I cannot see, cannot understand. An ephemeral presence that defies definition. The police remain uncalled. I possess nothing tangible, no crime beyond unnerving trespass. Finch remains passively concerned at best. Mr. Abernathy shares my anxiety, but the other residents offer only shrugs or nervous jokes about phantom prowlers. Laughter feels distant, alien. Every night, the question repeats. Will this be the night I see its face? The night it offers some clue? The tension sits like a stone in my gut. Each shift a tightrope walk between vigilance and incipient panic. Dawn approaches. Another shift nears its end. An hour ago, the monitor flickered, revealing the familiar shape in its usual haunt, followed by the usual vanishing act. My nerves feel shredded raw. A fine tremor persists in my hands. 15 minutes until the day man arrives. Home offers little respite. Sleep will likely be shallow, punctuated by ceiling staring and replays of shadows. Tomorrow night, I will return. I will walk the perimeter. I will watch the screens. I will hold my flashlight like a talisman. And I will wait for the hooded figure, half dreading, half hoping for an answer in that desolate corner. But thus far, there are only questions, multiplying with every elusive glimpse. The memory remains indelible. The moment my van shuddered to a halt before the gaunt manor, I emerged, craning my neck towards the structure looming at the cliff's precipice, the salt-laced wind scouring my cheeks. Its windows were vacant sockets. The great front doors, sealed tight, an unnerving sentience seemed to emanate from the building, a patient stillness anticipating my approach. I lingered, absorbing the fractured flagstones underfoot, the leprous patches where paint had surrendered to time and brine. My commission was precise: resurrect an antique piano, mute for untold years. As Elias Thorne, a tuner by trade, silence is my canvas, yet the quietude clinging to this place felt leaden, oppressive. I advanced towards the entrance. The door groaned its reluctance as I applied pressure, the sound swallowed by the cavernous hallway beyond. My own footfalls became intruders, echoing unnaturally in the stale air. I deposited my tool satchel onto the dust-furred floorboards. My gaze swept the foyer. A grand staircase spiraled upwards, flanked by imposing doorways. Ancestral portraits in tarnished frames regarded me from the walls, their subjects obscured by grime and shadow. I offered them no scrutiny, my focus narrowed to the task. I clutched a name, Abernathy, and a number should my work conclude swiftly. He'd informed me the house stood untenanted for decades, its proprietors now keen to sell, hoping a restored pianoforte might sweeten the prospect. The instrument resided in a vast chamber terminating the hall. Windows gaped towards the churning sea, framing the relentless assault of waves against the rocks below. There it sat, shrouded in a thick, time-stiffened sheet. Beneath, the wood bore scars, yet the internal strings appeared surprisingly sound. A cursory inspection followed, keys yellowed like old teeth, hammers displaying wear, though I, Elias, had certainly encountered far worse. I depressed a cluster of notes, anticipating a discordant jangle, a muffled thud, anything. There was only void, as if my fingers sank into silent, yieldy rubber. No resonance, no sympathetic hum, nothing. I re-examined the strings, taut enough. The hammers articulated correctly with the key press. No mechanical impediment was apparent. It should have sung, however brokenly. I rapped the casing with my knuckles. A solid, dull report confirmed the wood's integrity. The sustain pedal functioned beneath my foot. With greater force, I struck a chord. Still, the silence held absolute dominion. It was then that the first tendril of genuine unease coiled within me. The piano presented as perfectly viable. No tangible reason accounted for its profound muteness. Resolutely, I unpacked my implements. I addressed the tuning pins, tested the mechanism's action, assessed the hammer felts. Methodically, I tapped each key, ascending the scale, my ear straining for the faintest tonal variation it was trained to discern. All yielded that same unnerving emptiness. I nudged the hammers. They responded with the expected slight wobble, yet their impact on the strings produced no audible effect. My flashlight beam probed every recess of the instrument's heart. No obstructions, no foreign bodies, no telltale signs of moisture damage. Nothing. I leaned back, rubbing tired eyes. I had coaxed sound from derelicts, from pianos ravaged by neglect, but never had I faced an instrument seemingly whole, yet utterly devoid of voice. A trip back to the van yielded more specialized apparatus, including a small digital recorder. Perhaps, I reasoned, an infrasonic frequency lay beyond my hearing, yet detectable by sensitive equipment. Positioning the device near the soundboard, I initiated recording and depressed the keys once more. Silence persisted. After a minute, I stopped the recording and listened to the playback. Only the sibilance of my own breath and the distant, mournful sigh of the ocean. Nothing more. The urge to contact Abernathy, to confess bafflement, warred with my professional pride. I resolved to persevere, convinced some hidden fissure, some subtle disconnection within the intricate mechanics had eluded me. Hoisting the heavy lid, I scrutinized the cast-iron harp. Dusty, yes, but uncracked. The pins stood firm. Each wire remained intact. I depressed a key, my eyes fixed on the corresponding hammer's journey. I watched it strike the string. The string should have oscillated. It remained utterly inert, as if the very laws of acoustics had been suspended within the confines of this single object. A clammy dampness slicked my palms. Hours bled into one another within that chamber, my fingers probing, adjusting, testing. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaching the light from the sea-facing windows, until only the stark cone from a portable lamp I'd retrieved from the foyer illuminated my work. The rest of the manor sank into profound blackness. Outside, the wind moaned a low threnody. Ancient timbers groaned their response. At some juncture, I rose, stretching to alleviate the knotting tension in my shoulders. A flicker of movement registered at the edge of my vision. I spun, but the room held only the piano and me. A nervous chuckle escaped me. Fatigue playing tricks. Focus, Elias, I admonished myself. Perhaps organizing my tools, finding a bedchamber for respite. Then, behind me, it sounded a brief chaotic jumble of notes. A dissonant cluster, sharp and unexpected, like keys struck by an angry fist. My heart gave a violent lurch. I whirled, flashlight beam stabbing towards the piano. The keyboard lay placid, undisturbed. Nothing moved. Swallowing against a sudden tightness in my throat, I stepped closer. All appeared precisely as I'd left it. No evidence suggested any key had been touched. My mind scrambled for explanations. Wind whistling through a flue, a draft setting strings a quiver. But the room possessed no chimney, and the air remained still. Again, I deployed the recorder, setting it nearby. Record engaged. I approached the piano, pressed a few keys. Silence. I turned my back, stood motionless, listening intently. Only the wind's lament and the house's settling creaks reached my ears. After a tense minute or two, I retrieved the device, played back the recording, my breathing, a faint electronic hum, nothing else. I switched it off, my pulse a frantic drum against my eardrums. That chord. It had felt utterly real. With deliberate finality, I lowered the fallboard, concealing the keys. Sleep, I told myself. I needed sleep. Gathering my essential tools, I quit the room. An upstairs bedroom offered a bed cloaked in dust but structurally sound. I brushed away the worst of it, unrolled my sleeping bag atop the antique mattress, and set my phone alarm for the cusp of dawn. Perhaps daylight would lend clarity or normalcy to the piano's stubborn silence. I awoke feeling cramped and unsettled, the alarm's shrill insistence cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. 6 a.m. A pale, watery light began to suffuse the sky over the ocean. Entering the corridor, I found the house steeped in silence. Descending the stairs, I navigated back to the main room. The lamp stood where I'd left it, but extinguished. Strange, I thought I'd left it burning. I flicked the switch. It illuminated readily. As my gaze fell upon the piano, a fresh prickle of unease surfaced. The fallboard was raised. I distinctly recalled closing it. Approaching, I saw them. Fingerprints marring the ivory surfaces. Several distinct sets, smudged as if left by greasy or soiled hands. Perspiration returned to my palms. I scanned the dusty floor. Only my own tracks were visible. Pulling out my phone, I captured an image, my hand trembling slightly. The camera rendered the prints clearly. Tentatively, I touched a key with my own fingertip. Still silent, using a clean microfiber cloth, I meticulously wiped the keys clean. Then I tried them again. Nothing. 6:30 a.m. My stomach rumbled. A foray into the kitchen yielded little beyond empty cupboards and a faint, stale odor. Finding no forgotten bottled water, I drank sparingly from the plastic jug I'd brought before returning to the piano room. The sensation of being observed intensified, a palpable weight on my senses, though I remained utterly alone. Around mid-morning, struck by a new thought, I positioned my phone on a small tripod, angling it to capture the piano. I hit record, then deliberately made my way out of the room, ensuring my steps on the complaining floorboards were audible. I waited down the hall, concealed from view, for perhaps 10 minutes, straining my ears. Faint clicking sounds reached me, ambiguous. The piano or the house settling? Then I heard it again. A sequence of notes, disorganized, jarringly out of tune. It lasted no more than 5 seconds. My breath hitched. After a pause, I walked back into the room. The piano sat inert, exactly as before. I stopped the recording, played it back. The video showed the static scene perfectly, capturing my departing and returning footsteps, the faint rustle of my jacket. But the phantom notes, absent, utterly absent from the audio track. I replayed the segment repeatedly. Silence. On screen, the keys remained motionless throughout. Yet I knew what I had heard. I stood transfixed, staring at the instrument. A chill traced its way up my spine. My mouth was arid, my heartbeat thudding in my throat. Drawing closer, I examined the keys once more. Fresh smudges, they were back, on the very keys I had wiped clean not long before. Grimly, I wiped them again, pressed the keys. Silence. Opened the lid, checked the hammers, all in place. My hands shook as I retrieved my tools. I tightened a few pins superfluously. Then, using a small tuning hammer, I lightly tapped directly on the strings. A faint metallic ping responded to each direct impact, so the strings themselves weren't inherently dead. They reacted to force. But triggered by the keys? Nothing. I lost count of the attempts. The sequence repeated ad nauseum. Always the same result, silence. Finally, I straightened up, turned, took a single step away. From behind me, a wavering note sounded, thin and shaky, decaying into something that resembled a low moan. It hung in the air for less than a second. My throat constricted. I spun back, lunging towards the piano, flipping the lid open again, desperate to catch the hammers or strings in motion. Motionless. Still. Sweat beaded on my forehead, tracing cold paths down my temples. Enough! I needed air, distance. I retreated outside, climbed into the sanctuary of my van, turned the ignition. The engine's familiar rumble was a comfort. I sat gripping the wheel, debating. Flee? Abandon this inexplicable task? Yet, a stubborn sense of professional duty warred with primal fear. This wasn't a standard malfunction. My purview was mechanical failure, not whatever this was. I cut the engine. With renewed, albeit shaky resolve, I stepped back into the oppressive silence of the manor. I would stay until I could give Abernathy a definitive, albeit bizarre, assessment. Evening descended again, thicker, colder. The wind escalated its assault on the house. I consumed a couple of dry energy bars, drank more water. This time, I brought my sleeping bag downstairs, settling near the enigmatic piano. If nocturnal phenomena were occurring, I intended to witness them. I set up my phone to record once more, plugging it into a portable charger, flashlight close at hand. Hours crawled by. I drifted in a state between wakefulness or sleep, only to be jolted fully alert by a distorted clanging chord that reverberated through the room. I scrambled upright, snatching the flashlight. The beam found the piano. Several keys, scattered randomly across the board, were physically depressed as if under unseen weight. Then slowly, one by one, they rose, a sluggish, unnatural release. I stood frozen, breathed raggedly. I fumbled for my phone, aiming it, hoping to capture something. The screen showed only the static silhouette of the instrument, bathed in the harsh glare of my light. Later, reviewing the video revealed only darkness, punctuated by my own sharp inhalations. No sound of the chord, no visible movement of the keys. But looking back at the piano itself, I saw them. New fingerprints. The same pattern of smudges, now clustered on the upper register keys. Trembling, I leaned closer. The prints suggested long fingers, terminating in oddly wide pads. Larger than my own hands, which I held up for comparison. Sleep became impossible. The remainder of the night was a vigil of tension. Sporadically faint, disembodied tones would drift from the piano, always ceasing the instant I directed my gaze or light towards it. My shoulders ached with unrelieved stress. My head throbbed. The house groaned and protested under the wind's onslaught, each sound making me jump, expecting I knew not what. Nothing ever appeared in the doorways, only dust motes dancing in my flashlight beam and the play of shadows. Dawn arrived as a relief, painting the sky in bruised shades of grey. Below, the ocean heaved restlessly. My resolve solidified. Another night here was unthinkable. I began packing my tools methodically. One final time, I wiped the piano keys clean. A futile gesture perhaps, but I left it outwardly presentable, despite its profound silence. My report to Abernathy would be simple. The instrument had issues beyond my expertise. It was mechanically intact yet acoustically dead, haunted by phenomena I couldn't explain or repair. Before departing, I made a final circuit, extinguishing the lamps I'd used, closing doors against the persistent drafts. Back in the foyer, poised to leave, one last sound reached me from the piano room, a single, low note, rough-edged and resonant, like a bass string struck with excessive force and allowed to decay into static. I didn't turn back. I didn't want to see if fresh prints had appeared. I simply walked out. How to articulate the nature of that piano? I still lack the words. Every component, hammers, strings, pedals, keys, appeared functional, moved as designed, yet conspired in absolute silence when played conventionally. And yet those phantom chords, those fleeting notes, heard only when my attention was elsewhere. My recordings captured nothing. The ephemeral fingerprints remain an unsettling enigma. The entire experience felt fundamentally wrong, imbued with a presence that actively resisted my efforts. As the manor shrank in my rearview mirror, a profound sense of relief washed over me upon reaching the main road. I vowed to inform Abernathy that the piano was beyond my help, its strings whole but its silence inviolable. The memory of that instrument, paradoxically silent yet audibly disturbed, lingered long after I drove away. Silence is my métier, but the specific vintage I encountered in that cliffside manor is one I pray I never experience again. Just beyond our bedroom window, where the sea oats surrendered to bare sand, the first impression materialized. By dawn, a perfect circlet embraced the beach house. In that moment, the idyllic escape we'd craved curdled into a struggle for existence. Clara and I had yearned for this respite for months, submerged as we were in the city's relentless grind. A week untethered, cocooned in a secluded literal dwelling, promised a haven. No digital tethers, no demands, only the susurrus of the Atlantic against the shore. We arrived as Friday bled into evening, the sun a molten orb descending, staining the heavens with violent oranges and bruised purples. The house itself fulfilled the brochure's whispers. A quaint, two-tiered cottage, its shutters the faded blue of sea glass, girdled by a porch that surveyed the undulating dunes. It's sublime, Clara murmured, her gaze luminous, absorbing the panorama. I concurred. Solitude was absolute. The nearest habitation slumbered a half-mile distant along the curving coast. This sliver of paradise felt entirely ours. That inaugural evening dissolved in the pleasant rituals of unpacking, charting the house's small territories, and tracing the tide line as constellations pricked the velvet expanse above. The rhythmic exhalation of the waves and the briny tang of the air began their alchemy, leaching months of accumulated tension from my frame. We succumbed to sleep entwined, serenaded by the surf, anticipating a week of unbroken serenity. Dawn hadn't yet fractured the horizon when I woke. An ingrained pattern, impervious even to vacation's languor. Careful not to rouse Clara, I slipped from the sheets, descending to coax the coffee machine awake. While awaiting its gurgling completion, the nascent light, silvering the restless waves, drew me windowward. And there it was, one solitary footprint pressed into the sand directly beneath our window. My initial thought dismissed it, a remnant of our starlit walk. Yet, closer scrutiny revealed dimensions far exceeding either Clara's prints or my own. More unsettling still, it faced towards the house. A frisson of ice traced my vertebrae, defying the humid air. Impelled by a sudden urgency, before the incoming tide could erase the anomaly, I hastened outside. What awaited turned the ichor in my veins to frost. The singular print was no solitary aberration. It was merely one point on an unbroken ring encircling the entire structure, as though some entity had methodically paced around our sanctuary throughout the night. I stood immobile, mind grappling with the sheer impossibility. A prank, local youths vexing the seasonal renters. But the execution defied logic. Perfect impressions in yielding sand, yet no other disturbance. No tracks leading to or from this unsettling perimeter. Why the meticulous encirclement? "Elias, what are you doing out?" Clara's voice, querying, sliced through my paralysis. She stood upon the porch, swathed in a robe. For a fleeting second, the urge to shield her, to fabricate normalcy and preserve our fragile peace, arose. But facing her questioning eyes, the lie withered on my tongue. "Clara, you need to see this," I managed, indicating the prints. "Confirm I'm not losing my mind." She descended the steps, her own bare feet leaving delicate indentations beside the larger, deeply unnerving ones. As her eyes followed the circumference, her complexion waned. What is this?" she breathed. "I don't know," I confessed, "but I don't like it." The subsequent hour saw us scouring the beach, seeking any corroborating sign, any clue to the intruder's passage. Nothing. No errant scuffs, no trail leading away into the dunes. It was as if the printmaker had coalesced from the sea mist, performed their circuitous vigil, and dissolved back into the ether. "Should we call the authorities?" Clara proposed as we retreated to the house's seeming safety. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed. What report could we offer? Bizarre footprints, soon to be smoothed by the Atlantic sweep, hardly constituted a crime. Yet, lifting the landline receiver yielded only a hiss of static. My mobile displayed a stark "no service." We were adrift, isolated. "Likely the storm," I offered, gesturing toward the bruised clouds massing on the marine horizon. "Repairs will happen once it blows through." Clara acquiesced, but the anxiety clouding her eyes mirrored my own deepening disquiet. We endeavored to salvage the day, adhering to plans made in lighter spirits, but the carefree ambience of the prior evening had evaporated. Every creak of the old house startled. Each elongated shadow seemed to harbor unseen watchers. As dusk surrendered to night and the promised storm began its assault, the atmosphere within grew thick, a tangible miasma of fear. Locks were double-checked, curtains drawn tight, futile gestures against an intangible dread. "Perhaps we should leave," Clara whispered into the darkness of the bedroom. "Sleep an elusive phantom for us both. First light, drive straight back." "Agreed," I replied, though the concession chafed against some primal notion of territory. Safety, however, trumped pride. A percussive clap of thunder rattled the window panes, making us both flinch. The storm raged directly above now, rain thrown like handfuls of gravel against the glass. Brief, stark illuminations from the lightning rendered the familiar room alien, menacing. It was then we heard it, a sound divorced from the tempest's fury, a grating, measured scrape emanating from the floor below. Clara's hand found mine, her grip fiercely tight. "Elias," she whispered, her voice a fragile tremor. "Someone's inside." My instinct was to dismiss it, attribute it to the wind's violence. But I'd heard it too. And now, acutely attuned, another sound surfaced. Footfalls ponderous and deliberate, traversing the rooms beneath us. My thoughts scattered. The baseball bat glimpsed in a downstairs closet felt impossibly distant. The nearest potential weapon was the hefty ceramic lamp beside the bed. "Stay put," I hissed to Clara. "Lock this door after me. If anything sounds wrong, run. Don't hesitate. Just get out." She shook her head violently, clinging fast. "No, don't go." Another thunderous detonation coincided precisely with the house plunging into absolute blackness. The power was gone. Downstairs, the footsteps faltered, then resumed, their trajectory now undeniably aimed toward the staircase. In the suffocating dark, I fumbled, wrenching the lamp cord from the wall. Clara's breathing beside me was rapid, shallow, her terror palpable. The stairs groaned, one tread at a time, slow, methodical. No attempt at stealth. Whatever ascended did so with chilling deliberation. I rose, planting myself between the bed and the doorframe. Sweat slicked my palms on the lamp's cool base, yet my grip was iron, poised to strike. The footfalls reached the landing, a pause pregnant with the menace. Then with dreadful certainty, they turned towards our door. Behind me, Clara whispered fragments of what might have been a prayer. The doorknob began its slow, agonizing rotation. Primal instinct surged. I launched forward, swinging the lamp with every ounce of strength, just as the door creaked open. A sickening impact, a sharp cry of pain. A heavy weight slumped to the floorboards. Without conscious thought, I seized Clara's hand, pulling her towards the doorway, vaulting over the unseen obstacle. We plunged blindly down the stairs, guided only by the strobing lightning visible through the windows. From behind us, a sound, shuffling, followed by a low growl, less human than bestial. We burst through the front door into the tempestuous onslaught. Rain lashed us, the wind a physical blow, threatening our balance, but momentum propelled us forward. Down the beach we fled, the sodden sand dragging at our feet, each stride an immense effort. How long we ran remains a blur, minutes stretching into an eternity. The storm shrieked around us and behind. I dared not look. Eventually, faint lights glimmered ahead. The neighboring house. We staggered towards this beacon, our final reserves expended. The occupants, an elderly couple, startled by the apparition of two drenched, terrified figures hammering on their door amidst the storm's peak, ushered us inside without question, providing blankets and summoning the police. When the storm finally abated and law enforcement could investigate our rented cottage, they found nothing. No footprints marred the rain-smoothed sand. No sign of forced entry. The lamp rested innocuously on the bedside table, despite the vivid memory of its impact. The official conclusion cited overwrought imaginations exacerbated by the storm. But Clara and I carry the truth of that night etched into our memories. We know the sounds, the presence. We never returned to that stretch of coast, nor sought solitude in vacations thereafter. Crowded resorts, bustling cities, these became our sanctuaries. We learned irrevocably that isolation isn't always synonymous with peace. Sometimes it breeds terror. And sometimes the impressions left in the sand are not mere tracks, but dire warnings that you are never truly alone. The lake's tranquility fractured in my second week. Not mere unease, but a physical disturbance. The sharp crack of branches underfoot in the dead hours. A rhythmic pacing circling the property's edge. Crunch. Silence. Crunch. Silence. Wind, I reasoned initially. An animal, perhaps. Yet the cadence felt deliberate, unnatural. Each time a fist clenched around my heart. I'd bolt upright in bed, chest constricting, eyes fixed on the black pane of the bedroom window. Venture out. Into that ink-dark unknown. Unthinkable. Morning would reveal answers, I promised myself, though dawn brought only a lingering chill, a tension coiling deep in my gut. I, Silas, had sought refuge here, beside this placid water, embraced on three sides by dense, whispering woods. Isolation was the goal, a haven for my projects, undisturbed. No neighbors, no distant hum of traffic, just the sigh of wind through pines, the lap in water, the cry of a loon. The first week had been precisely that. Coffee at sunrise, the symphony of solitude, productivity blooming. Perfect peace, I thought, a fragile notion swiftly dismantled. 3 days in, peculiar signatures appeared in the earth flanking the house. Not footprints, but arrangements. Twigs and fallen leaves meticulously swept into shallow arcs. Clusters of debris, mirroring each other, resembling crude semicircles dragged into existence. A shiver traced my spine as I realized they formed a rough path, emerging from the forest's shadowed moor to the house's foundation. Crouching, I picked up a bent twig. It snapped with startling finality, the sound echoing unnervingly. My mouth went dry. This wasn't random. I swept the arrangements away, scattering them back into the undergrowth, willing them insignificant. Days later, They reappeared, smaller, subtler, but the same deliberate curves etched into the soil, like the ghost of footfalls, circling. A prickling sensation crawled up my arms. The air felt thin. Overreaction, surely. Wind patterns. I retreated indoors, forcing the explanation. Sleep became elusive that night. The memory of those earthen crescents burning behind my eyelids. Near midnight, the crunching returned. Closer this time, just beyond the low fence line. Slow, measured steps crushing leaves and twigs. I retrieved a heavy torch. Its weight cold in my hand, but remained rooted inside. The hallway felt miles long as I stood, listening, breath shallow, stomach twisting. 10 minutes crawled by before courage, thin as it was, propelled me to the living room window. Peering through the slats, revealed only impenetrable darkness. Then, from the woods, a protracted howl ripped through the night. No wolf's cry, no coyote's yelp. I knew those sounds from childhood. This was aberrant, its pitch scaling in a way that raised the hairs on my nape, vibrating deep in my bones. My knees buckled. I scrambled away from the window, heart hammering against my ribs. Morning found me by the lake, seeking clarity in its glassy surface. The water murmured softly at the shore. Then peripherally, near a stand of reeds perhaps 60 feet away, a shape. Tall, unnervingly still, draped in what seemed like sodden moss or riverweed. Arms hung low, unnaturally long. Legs seemed stretched, disproportionate. I froze, mesmerized, scalp tingling, breath caught tight in my chest. I blinked, a desperate attempt to clear my vision, and it vanished. Only ripples disturbed the water where it had stood. Sweat beaded on my forehead. I stumbled towards the spot, heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Nothing. The reeds swayed innocently. But on the muddy bank, impressions. Damp, elongated ovals pressed deep into the silt. Larger than any human foot, devoid of discernible toes. A wave of nausea washed over me. I forced myself to kneel, examining the smooth contours. They led from the water's edge, disappearing into the tangled undergrowth. A pungent odor accompanied them. Rotting vegetation and stagnant water. I followed the strange trail until it dissolved into the dense tapestry of the forest floor just a few paces in. That evening, my house blazed with light, every lamp switched on against the encroaching dark. Focus on work was impossible. The oval prints swam before my eyes. Old films flickered on the screen, but each creak from outside, each rustle of leaves, sent me lunging for the remote, ears straining, silence, wind. Then, near midnight, a flicker of motion at the periphery of the side window. I shot to my feet, throat tight, edging closer. I peered out, nothing visible, but the glass bore a faint, greasy smudge, as if something damp had pressed against it. My hand trembled as I fumbled with the lock, confirming it was secure. I made a frantic circuit of the house, checking every latch, every deadbolt. Locked tight, yet the feeling of exposure, of being utterly permeable, remained. The following days passed without direct confrontation, but the signs persisted. Leaves scattered in unnatural spirals, more twig arcs materializing overnight. Some nights, the alien howl echoed from the depths of the woods. Others brought faint, rhythmic clicking sounds like stones tapped together, seeming to emanate from the trees. I caught no further daytime glimpses, though sometimes deep within the shifting green shadows, I imagined movement. I installed motion-activated floodlights in the backyard, hoping their sudden glare might deter whatever lurked. The next night, I awoke to their insistent cycling. Click on, blinding white light. Click off, consuming dark. On, off, on, off. Pulling on a jacket over my pajamas, I eased the back door open a crack. The floodlight blazed, illuminating the empty lawn, the stark tree line beyond. Darkness swallowed it. 30 seconds. Light flared again. Still empty. Every nerve screamed. A pulse throbbed in my temples. Cold air bit my face. My breath plumed in shallow bursts. A step onto the porch. Another. The sensor tripped, bathing the yard in harsh light. And there, near the fence line, it stood. The tall figure, draped in its mantle of slick green-black growth, motionless facing me. No eyes were visible, just the silhouette of an elongated head, perhaps hooded or misshapen. Its arms, impossibly long, hung past its hips. A choked sound escaped me. I raised my torch, thumbed it on, aiming the beam towards the fence. The reaction was instantaneous. A blur of speed I barely registered. It slid behind the thick trunk of an oak, a slick limb vanishing into the shadows. My throat felt like sandpaper. 2 more steps forward, torch beam sweeping wildly. Nothing. My skin burned despite the chill. The frantic thudding in my ears drowned out the night sounds. I retreated, backing into the house, slamming the deadbolt home. Leaning against the cool wood of the door, eyes stinging from refusal to blink, I listened. Silence. Sleep, when I finally sought my bed, was impossible. I lay fully clothed atop the covers, staring at the ceiling until just as exhaustion threatened, the distant howl returned, sharp enough to twist my insides. Daylight, I decided, demanded investigation. Safer surely, clad in sturdy boots, clutching a long branch for meager defense, I entered the woods. Cool air, the scent of damp earth and decay. I moved with deliberate slowness, pausing, listening, birdsong, the occasional rustle of wind-stirred leaves. Then, 20 minutes in, a clear path of crushed vegetation, recently trodden by something large. The trail led deeper, following cautiously, navigating moss-slicked logs and dense ferns. I emerged into a small, muddy clearing. There they were again. The footprints. Larger here, oval, spaced for immense strides. The fetid smell of rot and pond scum hung heavy in the still air. My nose wrinkled. Kneeling, I pressed a hand against the edge of one print. The mud beneath was cool, still yielding. My pulse leaped. I straightened, scanning the silent clearing. No breeze, no birdsong, absolute stillness. A prickle crawled across my scalp. Slowly, deliberately, I backed away, retreating from the clearing, from the woods. I had no desire for an encounter. Not here. Not vulnerable and alone. The subsequent evenings were spent behind drawn blinds, the house aggressively lit. Night brought its familiar chorus, snapping twigs, the unsettling howl, the intermittent clicking that seemed to orbit the house. A constant pressure resided in my chest. Focusing felt Herculean. I called Leo, attempting normalcy, mentioning only strange noises. Raccoons, he suggested, maybe deer. I didn't elaborate. The truth felt too fragile, too insane for casual conversation. One night, restlessness gnawing at me around 10, I resolved to make a quick perimeter check before surrendering to bed. Torch in one hand, phone clutched in the other, I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The lone bulb cast a weak yellow circle on the grass. Beyond lay shadow. I moved towards the lake, steps measured, silent on the damp ground. Cold air ghosted my breath. Halfway to the shore, a low clicking emanated from my left. My body went rigid, stomach plummeting. I swung the torch beam towards the sound. A tall shape darted behind a massive pine. The light caught a fleeting impression of wet, greenish texture. Blood roared in my ears. I backed away, torch beam held steady before me, refusing to turn. The clicking intensified, ricocheting between the trees. Teeth clenched, I retreated step by agonizing step until the porch boards were beneath my feet. Inside, lock secured, my hands shook violently. Breath came in ragged gasps. Chest tight, throat constricted. I performed another frantic circuit, checking, rechecking every window, every door. Then I collapsed into a living room chair, torch gripped like a talisman. House ablaze with light, my limbs felt weak, twitching at every gust of wind against the walls. I remained awake all night, listening. The motion lights flared sporadically, painting frantic shadows, but I stayed put, paralyzed by dread. Now dusk triggers an automatic tightening in my muscles. Sweat slicks my palms. My mind races, replaying glimpses, anticipating the next sighting. No direct confrontation yet, but the awareness of being watched is absolute. Observed, studied perhaps, as a predator assesses its quarry. Even moving through my own brightly lit rooms, a cold dread settles in my stomach. My phone is a constant weight in my hand, poised to dial for help, though the words elude me. There's something tall and covered in moss circling my house. Incredulity would be the kindest response. Leaving feels both imperative and impossible. Flight versus the desperate need to understand. Each night is harder. I sleep fitfully, bathed in the glow of the bedside lamp. A floor lamp in the corner, the hallway light spilling through the doorway. Darkness feels like an accomplice to the thing outside. Light is my flimsy shield. Each morning, I scout the property's edge. Most days the prints are there, near the fence, in patches of soft earth, always leading back to the forest's impenetrable depths. Sometimes, long vertical scratches mar the bark of trees, as if something sharp, clawed, raked down the wood. Touching the rough grooves, my breath hitches, heartbeat accelerating. I scan the tree line, half expecting the figure to materialize behind me. Fleeting movements dance at the edge of my vision, dissolving when I turn. Denial is a luxury I can no longer afford. The evidence is tangible, the fear visceral, tightening my throat each night. Its motives remain opaque. How to make it leave? Unknown. All that remains is vigilance. Lights burning, locks secured, waiting for the reprieve of sunrise. Yet, a certainty grows within me. This is a prelude. It's only a matter of time before it crosses the threshold. Steps from shadow into substance. Every evening, I watch the windows, wondering if tonight is the night it ventures into the yard, onto the porch, tests the door. The thought lands like a physical blow, leaving me breathless, teetering on the edge of panic. Right now, I sit in the living room, bathed in artificial daylight, writing this. It's an anchor in the storm. Outside, the wind rises, rattling the trees. The motion light flickers, a nervous pulse in the dark. My eyes dart constantly to the windows. My mouth is parchment dry. My fingertips are ice. I'm waiting for the shape to resolve itself from the darkness. I cannot see it, not yet. But I feel its presence. Crouched perhaps beneath the deck, hidden behind the ancient oak, listening to the scratch of my pen, the beat of my heart. I cannot stop thinking about the next time I must step outside into the night. Because I feel it deep in my bones, it will be waiting. And I don't know how much longer I can endure this vigil. Memory holds the precise instant etched sharp. A Saturday sun beat down, the air thick with the grit of demolition. Sweat slicked my brow. My muscles screamed from wrestling down fractured drywall, hauling sarcophagi of dust-choked boxes, heaving splintered timbers into the waiting maw of the dumpster outside. Exhaustion was a dull ache settled deep in my shoulders. The task ahead seemed straightforward enough. Untangle the ceiling's ancient electrical knots, thread new veins of cable, then smooth the scars with plaster and paint. A compact, time-worn house, its secrets supposedly laid bare on the brittle blueprints bequeathed by the previous occupants. No anomalies marked those pages, no clandestine chambers, just a simple single story, crowned by a prosaic attic space I'd cursorily inspected upon purchase. Utterly conventional. That morning found me perched atop the rickety stepladder in the narrow corridor. Peeling back a pre-scored rectangle of plaster revealed not just the anticipated tangle of wires, but it. A flat slab of wood, perhaps 2 feet by 3, nested flush amongst the ceiling joists. A door. My breath hitched, seconds stretched thin as I simply stared. This portal, I knew, with unshakable certainty, hadn't existed in my prior surveys. The attic access proper, a folding contraption, resided clear across the house. This newcomer was alien. Its hinges bore the patina of age, rust blooming like dried blood. A primitive metal curve served as a handle. It whispered of forgotten decades, an anachronism against the modern wiring I planned. An installation long past, yet utterly invisible until this moment, and glaringly absent from the architectural drafts. Confusion clouded my fatigue. My fingers traced the door's coarse grain. The metal handle felt cold, rudimentary. Rust flaked under my touch. Was it locked? A tentative nudge yielded a slight shift, a dry rasp of wood against wood. Silence answered, profound and absolute. Above should lie nothing but skeletal rafters, drifts of insulation, dormant wires. Had the blueprints lied through omission? Resolve hardening, I gripped the crude handle. It resisted, grudging. A sharper tug elicited a brittle, cracked paint or desiccated wood surrendering at the seams. Then, upward, it swung. Gravity rained down a fine, particulate shroud, stinging my eyes. I swiped at my face with the grimy sleeve. My work lamp's beam sliced into the void. An unfinished pocket of attic unfolded. Raw joists, yellowed insulation, clinging like old moss. Nothing remarkable at first glance. I craned my neck through the aperture. Confined, yes, yet ample enough for concealment. Low rafters pressed close. The air hung heavy, stagnant, thick with the scent of time undisturbed, of decades sealed away. No clutter, no forgotten relics, just emptiness, yet not empty. A prickle crawled my nape, goose flesh rising on my arms. The distinct, unnerving sensation of observation. of unseen eyes fixed upon me from the shadows just beyond the light's reach. My beam swept frantically. Stillness reigned. Retreating, I pulled the panel shut, its hinges groaning a final complaint. Back on the ladder, heart thudding against my ribs, I stared at the sealed rectangle. Rational thought, I commanded myself. An old house, hidden spaces, forgotten access points, perfectly explainable, sealed off, never documented, plausible deniability. Yet the phantom weight of that gaze lingered, a chill that logic couldn't dispel. Why the feeling of being watched in an empty space? Merely the jitters of discovery. Descending, muscles coiled tight, a knot forming low in my gut. I wrestled with indecision. Proceed with the wiring, plaster over the anomaly, pretend it never happened. The urge was strong, but ignorance felt like a different kind of vulnerability. Work resumed, but focus proved elusive. Tools felt leaden in my grasp. My spine, a column of tension. My gaze kept drifting upward, snagging on that patch of ceiling above the hallway, near the defunct coat closet. How had I never noticed it? The afternoon bled away as I wrestled wires into place, my mind orbiting the unsettling discovery. Lunch was tasteless. Scrolling through videos on my phone offered no distraction. The image of the door superimposed itself onto the screen. An unfamiliar disquiet permeated the house now, a stillness too profound. The air itself seeming thick and stagnant. Throwing open windows did little to dissipate it. Drawn back, I stood beneath the hatch squinting. Had fatigue conjured it? No, the seams remained starkly visible against the plaster. Compelled by a need for certainty, I retrieved the ladder. One more look meticulously this time. Ascent. Open. The beam of my torch, held in a white-knuckled grip, painted slow arcs across the cramped space. Rafters, insulation, nails protruding like ancient teeth. A solitary plank bridging two joists, a forgotten remnant, nothing more. Yet the watcher was present, its invisible pressure amplified. My pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against my eardrums. My mouth felt like parchment. A knot tightened between my shoulder blades. To shatter the oppressive silence, I forced words into the void. Anyone there? A foolish question met by predictable silence. My voice sounded alien here, swallowed instantly by the dead air. A visceral chill seized me. Down again, shut. A small, simple latch I hadn't noticed before clicked into place. Descending, I wiped fresh sweat from my brow. Calm. Just an attic crawl space. Seal it tomorrow. Drywall, paint, oblivion. But the conviction that something was fundamentally wrong clung like cobwebs. Evening offered no solace. A cold sandwich, a tepid beer. Wandering the half-finished rooms, surveying the work ahead. Walls demanding paint. A sink pleading for repair. Floors yearning for the sander's bite. The house felt altered, charged. My nerves frayed at the edges. Was that a floorboard groaning under unseen weight? A faint, rhythmic tapping? Each time I strained to listen, silence mocked me. My eyes were magnets, drawn constantly ceilingward. The feeling intensified. Observation, palpable as breath on my neck. Knots twisted in my stomach. Sleep seemed the only escape, though retreating to bed felt like surrender. Night became a landscape of fractured rest. Waking abruptly, drenched in cold sweat. Soft footfalls impossibly light. Overhead, a delicate scrape like fingernails on wood. I lay rigid, breath held captive in my chest, heart pounding a frantic tattoo against the mattress. Faint, ambiguous sounds. The house settling, surely. Old timbers contracting, yet perspiration beaded on my skin. The urge to investigate warred with a primal reluctance to confront that door again. Foolish, jittery, sleep eventually reclaimed me, but it was thin, brittle. Dawn brought resolve, sharp and cold. Enough. Crowbar in one hand, a sheet of sturdy plywood in the other, I confronted the hallway ceiling. One final, obligatory glance. Ladder scaled, hatch opened, light thrust inside. Identical emptiness. No disturbance, no sign of passage. Yet the oppressive weight remained, a bitter taste coating my tongue. My palms were slick, my grip on the ladder fiercely tight. Retreat, slammed shut. The plywood went up, screws biting deep into the joists, anchoring it firmly from below. A barrier. An end. Done. But closure remained elusive. Working elsewhere, my concentration fractured. My ears strained, listening for the silence above to break. Passing through the bathroom, my eyes scanned the ceiling corners reflexively. Phantom drafts teased my skin from unexpected quarters. Nerves, I insisted, just nerves. One wall painted, a break needed. A call to Leo, my friend, a lifeline to normalcy. I mentioned the peculiar hatch, glossing over the spectral unease, framing it as an architectural quirk. Old houses? He chuckled, full of weird stuff, probably some forgotten storage. The mundane conversation grounded me, briefly. Then the line went dead. The house exhaled silence, and the tension flooded back. Late afternoon, a distinct soft tap. I froze mid-stride in the hallway, every muscle taut. Silence, then again, tap. From above. My gaze locked onto the defiant white square of plywood. Tap. Delicate, insistent, like a single fingertip drumming lightly against the wood. I backed away, a constriction tightening my chest, neck muscles rigid as stone. My own pulse roared in my ears. Explanation scrambled. Heat expansion? A wind-blown branch? Impossible. No trees grew near that roofline. Music blared, a desperate attempt to drown it out. An exterior inspection revealed nothing amiss. Roofline intact, vents unchanged. Inside again, dinner choked down, avoiding the hallway's gaze. But the feeling persisted. A psychic pressure, the air beneath the sealed panel discernibly colder. My throat constricted. Water offered no relief. Fists clenched, unclenched. A wire pulled taut within me, humming with nameless dread. Nightfall amplified the dread. Waking near midnight, slick with sweat, to a faint scrub, persistent, close, from the hallway. Heart slamming against my ribs, I swung my legs out of bed, limbs feeling thick as clay. Light flooded the corridor. The plywood panel remained fixed. Or did it? One corner. Was it infinitesimally raised? A hair's breadth difference. Imagination, surely. My fingertip traced the seam, secure, yet standing there, staring. A tremor ran through my hands, breathing deep, seeking calm. The silence now felt different, charged, expectant, like the air before lightning strikes. I spoke into the stillness, my voice low but firm. Stop. The silence absorbed the command without ripple. Rubbing my face, feeling the rasp of stubble, the dampness on my forehead, I retreated, sleep a distant shore. Morning light revealed a new detail. A hairline fracture, spider webbing in the plaster beside the plywood's edge. Thin as thread, almost invisible. I hadn't caused it. My installation had been precise. Touching it, The plaster felt unnaturally cold. Ear pressed against the wood yielded only the rush of my own blood. The day passed in a haze of determined work, punctuated by involuntary glances toward the hallway. An experiment formed. My phone, perched on a chair, lens aimed upward, recording the sealed square. An hour I gave it, working noisily in the adjacent room. Reviewing the footage showed nothing conclusive. No movement, no sound captured by the microphone. Only a momentary flicker of the hallway light, perhaps an artifact of the camera's sensor, perhaps not. The unease remained, a stubborn stain. Days bled into weeks. I waged a war of attrition against the feeling, drowning the silence in loud music, burying myself in the physical labor of renovation, patching, sanding, painting, installing. I sealed the doors between my chosen bedroom, now situated at the house's farthest point, and the haunted corridor. Earplugs became nightly companions. A fan whirred constantly, churning the stagnant air. Futile gestures. The presence lingered, tethered to that hallway, a palpable weight whenever I passed through. No apparitions, no physical evidence beyond a faint crack and questionable sounds. Leo helped me shift a heavy armoire one afternoon. He noticed nothing, felt nothing. I offered no explanation for the sealed ceiling panel, unwilling to voice the irrational dread, unwilling to sound like a man unmoored. Eventually, a truce was declared, albeit one-sided. I finished the other rooms, leaving the hallway ceiling untouched beneath its plywood shield. My bedroom remained relocated. Nighttime journeys through the corridor became swift, purposeful dashes. The plywood stayed inviolate. I never touched it again. Acceptance settled in, gray and resigned. The feeling of being watched became a dull background hum, occasionally swelling in intensity but never manifesting further. I learned its contours, adapted to its presence. A tall bookcase now stands directly beneath the sealed square, obscuring it from casual view, a deliberate blind spot. Time has passed. The sensation hasn't vanished entirely, but it has receded, like a tide pulling back, but never fully gone. I know, with a certainty that defies logic, that the hidden space is not empty, that unseen eyes track my movements when my guard is down. No grand denouement arrived, no exorcism performed, no experts were consulted, no further demolition undertaken. That chapter is closed. This house, with its time-worn frame and its secret watcher, is mine. It has offered no violence, only surveillance. And so, I coexist. I keep my head down, focus on the tangible, the mundane. And when the hairs on my neck rise, when that familiar pressure settles between my shoulder blades, I simply move on. What other choice is there? That flicker in the agent's gaze, a shard of obsidian catching unnatural light, should have been part my cue to flee. But the heavy oak had already thudded closed, the lock tumbling home with chilling finality. No mere property tour, this. A snare had sprung. Weeks bled into a month of scouring listings, each rejection a fresh wound in the brutal skirmish of the housing market. Then a digital mirage, a sprawling Victorian manse, impossibly priced, blooming on my screen like a rare, poisonous flower. Its online facade whispered of gabled roofs and shadowed gardens, a siren song to my depleted spirit. Too perfect, surely. Yet desperation gnawed. An appointment was secured for that very afternoon, hope flickering against better judgment. The coordinates led down lanes less traveled, finally surrendering to a serpentine drive choked by ancient grasping trees. Emerging into a clearing, the house loomed. Grander, yes, but radiating a palpable disquiet. The air hung thick, stagnant, and the void-dark windows seemed like vacant eyes observing my approach, awe warred with the primal urge to reverse course. Upon the veranda stood a figure, wreathed in shadow despite the afternoon light. He stepped forward, extending a hand. "Silas Thorne," he announced, his smile a meticulously crafted warmth that didn't quite reach his eyes, irises of startling glacial blue. A practiced charisma flowed from him, soothing the jagged edges of my apprehension. Nerves, I told myself. Only nerves. I followed him across the threshold. "A singular opportunity," Thorne murmured, his voice a low thrum resonating in the cavernous foyer. Held within the same lineage for centuries, they relinquish it reluctantly. Your timing is most fortunate. My gaze swept over soaring ceilings, ribbed with dark wood, a majestic staircase coiling towards unseen heights. Yet, beneath the grandeur lay the scent of dust and decay, and phantom flickers danced at the edge of my vision. Room bled into room, Thorne's narrative weaving a hypnotic tapestry of history and architectural detail. His voice, a silken lure, drew me deeper, silencing the questions forming in my mind. An hour evaporated before I realized my own passivity. We arrived in a vast, shadowed kitchen. "Hydration is key on such occasions," Thorne observed, already turning the tap, the gush of water unnaturally loud in the stillness. He presented a glass, his gaze fixed upon me as I drank, a sudden parching thirst blooming in my throat. He lounged against a time-worn counter, radiating an unnerving patience. "Impressions?" he inquired softly. "Does the residence speak to you?" A tremor of doubt surfaced. The structure possessed undeniable beauty, yet an intrinsic wrongness permeated it. "It's remarkable," I managed, choosing my words with care. "Perhaps a return visit to fully absorb." Thorne's smile frayed at the edges, a fleeting crack in the veneer. "Understandable," he purred, regaining his composure instantly. "Though, permit me one final unveiling. The heart of the home, as it were." He guided me towards a corridor hitherto unseen, a passage where the very floorboards groaned underfoot and the temperature plummeted. Before a formidable slab of dark wood, he paused. "Here," Thorne breathed, his hand closing over the cold iron knob. "The true essence resides." He swung the door inward, revealing not a room, but a maw of absolute blackness that drank the ambient light. As I leaned in, straining to discern anything within the void, a forceful impact struck my spine. I pitched forward into the suffocating dark, the heavy door crashing shut behind me with the sound of a vault ceiling. Raw panic clawed its way up my throat. I slammed my fists against the unyielding wood. "Thorne, what is this? Open this door." His voice, stripped bare of its silken charm, seeped through the barrier, cold and final. "Regrettably, no. The domicile requires sustenance, and you, my dear prospect, are precisely its type." Ice flooded my veins, a waking nightmare. My fingers scrabbled for my phone. A dead screen, mocking my isolation. No bars. As my pupils strained against the gloom, contours emerged. A circular chamber, its walls tattooed with unsettling archaic sigils. At its heart stood a squat stone altar, slick with stains too dark, too viscous for rust. A frantic scan confirmed my entombment. No windows, no other egress. Just the oppressive stone and the deepening dread. Then a vibration began, low and guttural, seemingly emanating from the very fabric of the structure. The carved symbols pulsed with a sickly luminescence, and an awareness coalesced in the darkness, vast, ancient, and ravenous. "It stirs," Thorn's disembodied voice whispered. "Too long has it slumbered without tribute. May you prove nourishing." I recoiled, pressing myself against the cold, vibrating stone, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. The rumbling intensified, the walls seeming to flex, to breathe, as if something gestated within. Through the paralyzing fear, a spark of defiance ignited. Not here. Not like this. My desperate gaze swept the chamber, snagging on the altar. There, nestled in shadow, lay a glint of metal. A knife, primitive, its blade tarnished with age-encrusted obscenities. I lunged, my hand seizing the rough hilt just as a segment of the wall imploded inwards. A glistening slate-gray tendril, impossibly vast, lashed through the opening towards me. Instinct took over. I swung the archaic blade, feeling an unexpected purchase as it sliced into the appendage. A deafening, unearthly shriek ripped through the room, shaking the very stones around me as the tendril violently retracted. A surge of adrenaline. I pivoted, attacking the heavy door, hacking furiously at the wood surrounding the lock mechanism. The ancient knife bit shallowly, progress agonizingly slow. From the other side, Thorn's composure finally fractured. "Desist," he roared, his voice tight with fury. "You meddle in things you cannot comprehend." I ignored his threats, pouring every ounce of strength into the assault. Behind me, the sounds of stone yielding intensified, the oppressive presence swelling, pressing closer. Time was a luxury I didn't possess. With a final despair-fueled blow, the wood around the lock gave way with a splintering crack. I tore the ruined door open, finding myself inches from Thorn's astonished face. No time for thought. I shoved past his momentarily stunned form, launching myself down the corridor in a blind sprint. "Contain it!" Thorn bellowed into the empty air behind me. Contain me, but addressed to whom? As I fled, the house revealed its true nature. Portrait eyes swiveled in their frames, tracking my panicked flight. Floorboards buckled and warped beneath my feet, attempting to ensnare me. The very architecture conspired against my escape. The grand foyer beckoned, freedom almost within reach. My hand closed on the ornate front door handle when sinuous tendrils abruptly coiled around my ankle. I glanced down in horror. The oriental rug, its intricate patterns writhing, its fringes animating like vipers, climbing my leg. A strangled cry tore from me as I hacked downwards with the knife. The rug recoiled with a sibilant hiss. I wrenched the heavy door open and spilled onto the porch, collapsing into the night. The night air, cool and blessedly real, struck my face. Night? How many hours had I been captive within those walls? Behind me, Thorn's enraged pursuit echoed down the stairs. Scrabbling for keys, fumbling with the ignition, I threw the car into reverse. The tires screamed on the gravel. A fleeting glance in the rearview mirror captured Thorne at the drive's end. His features contorted into a mask of impotent rage. But it was the edifice behind him that froze my blood. Every window blazed with a lurid, impossible light, and deep within shapes writhed, fluid and tentacular. I drove, propelled by sheer terror, until the bruised colors of dawn stained the horizon. At a desolate rest area, engine ticking, my hands trembled too violently to unbuckle the seatbelt. Was it delusion? A stress-induced hallucination? But there, on the passenger seat, lay the knife. Its blade, once crusted and dull, now gleamed unnaturally, pristine. Proof. The house, Thorne, the entity within, horrifyingly real and unbound. To whom could I recount such a tale? Authority? Friends? The story? A sentient predatory house? A realtor brokering souls for cosmic horrors? Would earn me pity, perhaps confinement. Madness sounds much like truth sometimes, even to the one who lived it. But I know. Now every quaint facade, every reduced-price banner fluttering on a weathered gatepost triggers the memory. The obsidian flicker in Silas Thorne's eyes, the abyssal hunger emanating from those walls, the razor's edge between existence and becoming another footnote in the annals of the missing. So, should you find yourself drawn to a dwelling that whispers promises too sweet, whose price defies all reason, heed this survivor's counsel. Intuition is your truest compass. Some dream homes are prisons in disguise, and sometimes the foundations are built on something far older and infinitely more voracious than stone. Tread carefully. The market is hungry. The asphalt groaned under a merciless sun, the horizon dissolving into liquid heat phantoms. My chariot, a rust-balked sedan named Hope, had exhaled its final mechanical sigh, abandoning me to the vast indifference of the nowhere stretching between states. Thumb extended toward the shimmering void, a desperate prayer for passage. I couldn't fathom that the approaching silhouette heralded not salvation, but the threshold of a terror from which escape seemed impossible. Days blurred into a ribbon of asphalt unwinding behind me, each mile a deliberate step away from a shattered relationship towards a promised renewal on the Californian coast. Destiny, however, had drafted a detour. A percussive, metallic tick-tick-tick from the engine bay became the journey's grim soundtrack, a prelude to the inevitable surrender. Hope sputtered, coughed, and died, bequeathing a plume of grey smoke to the stagnant air. An hour evaporated under the sun's anvil strike. Each passing vehicle ignored my outstretched hand, dissolving my resolve like salt in water. Thirst clawed at my throat. The mirage of the last town shimmered with the impossible distance of a backward trek. Then, a low growl vibrated through the soles of my shoes. An obsidian monolith on wheels materialized from the heat haze, swelling in the vast emptiness. Hope, sharp and sudden, pierced through the lethargy. Closer now, the driver resolved into a figure. Mid-40s perhaps. Hair streaked with distinguished grey, eyes hidden behind dark lenses. The SUV glided to a halt beside me, the window whispering down. Trouble? His voice was smooth, overlaid with an affable smile. A wave of pure relief crested over me. Yes. Oh, thank you. My car. It just died back there. He offered a commiserating nod. Climb aboard. Next town's my route anyway. Name's Silas. Elara, I replied, tumbling into the blissful chill of the air-conditioned cabin. As we surged forward, a final glimpse caught my poor, abandoned hope shrinking in the rear view. Silas filled the silence easily, inquiries about my travels mingling with laments on automotive frailty. The hours of isolation melted. Gratitude made me lower my guard. But time stretched, marked only by the hypnotic thrum of tires on pavement. Subtle dissonances began to fray the edges of my relief. A mention of summoning roadside assistance once we arrived drew a fleeting, bloodless clench of Silas's knuckles on the wheel. An hour bled into more, the promised town remaining stubbornly beyond the horizon. No mile markers, no signs, only endless road. This town, I ventured, aiming for nonchalance, it feels like we should be closer? Silas's smile didn't falter, yet it seemed thinner. Just a little ways more. Misjudged the distance slightly. We'll get there. A nod was my only reply, but beneath it, a knot of ice tightened in my gut. My phone confirmed the isolation. No service, of course. The terrain outside had morphed, the bleached expanse yielding to encroaching walls of dense, unfamiliar forest. Where were we? The map in my head spun uselessly. You know, I managed, my tongue thick and dry. I'm feeling a bit off. Maybe we could pull over at the next service station. Again, that telltale tension in his hands. Nothing out here for ages, he countered smoothly. Better to press on to our destination. Our destination, not the town. The distinction hung in the air, stark and chilling. The affable mask had slipped, revealing the predator beneath. Panic surged, cold as sharp. Escape options flickered and died. The speed was too great, the doors likely secured. Unarmed, trapped, only instinct and the potential shock of the unexpected remained. Breathe. Act normal. Suspicion would be fatal. I manufactured chatter, lobbing meaningless questions about the alien woods scrolling past the window, my gaze simultaneously cataloging the cabin's interior, searching for leverage, a weapon, anything. A curve revealed it. A sliver of raw earth. A track diverging into the dense green. Opportunity, fleeting and desperate. Stop. Look. My shriek tore through the manufactured calm, finger jabbing towards the trees. A bear. I saw a huge bear right there. Reflexively, Silas stomped the brake. The SUV protested, tires screaming on the tarmac. In that heartbeat of startled reaction, I lunged. The handle gave, unlocked, and I threw myself out, hitting the packed dirt shoulders with a jarring thud. Pain flared, ignored. Adrenaline was afire in my veins, launching me upright and into a dead sprint down that unpaved path. Branches lashed like whips as the forest swallowed me whole. Behind, enraged shouting, the solid thump of a closing car door. The pursuit had begun. Flight became pure, unthinking instinct. Lungs burned like furnaces, legs pistoned relentlessly. Looking back was a luxury I couldn't afford. The sounds of pursuit were spurs enough, driving me deeper into the emerald labyrinth. Time dissolved. Minutes felt like eternities before my body betrayed me. Legs buckled, strength fled. I crumpled behind the broad trunk of an ancient oak, gulping air, trying to silence the ragged heave of my chest. Silence, save for a frantic drumming in my ears. Then, distant but distinct, the snap of a twig, the whisper of disturbed leaves. He was close, hunting. Frantic eyes scanned the undergrowth. A fallen giant, a log hollowed by decay, offered meager sanctuary. It would have to do. I wormed inside, the damp earth and scuttling unseen things, a minor horror compared to the one stuck in the woods. Through a crack, I saw them. Heavy boots treading the leaf litter, deliberate, patient. The measured pace of a hunter closing in. Little rabbit, his voice drifted through the trees, laced with a chilling amusement. Lost are we. Can't run forever, Ilara. And the game's much less fun when you hide too well. The implied violence hung heavy in the humid air. I clamped my teeth on my lower lip, tasting copper, silencing a rising sob. Time crawled. Dusk bled through the canopy, painting the woods in shades of grey and dread. Silas hadn't left. His movements echoed periodically, a tightening perimeter of fear. My limbs screamed from their confinement, but stillness was survival. Darkness brought a new terror. Disorientation. Escape him, yes. But into what? A lightless maze promising death by exposure. Just when the despair threatened to consume me, a fresh horror. Voices. Not Silas alone. Rougher tones, cutting through the gloom. Silas? Where the hell are you? My stomach plummeted. Accomplices. This wasn't random. It was practiced. A hunt. Here, Silas yelled back, his voice closer now. Slipped away the little thing. But she's trapped in this section. Multiple footfalls crunched nearby. Cones of light sliced through the undergrowth, sweeping perilously close to my refuge. Fan out, Silas commanded. Flush her out. I squeezed my eyes shut, a wordless plea forming in the crucible of terror. And then, impossibly, cutting through the forest's hush, a siren. Faint at first, then swelling, undeniable. The footsteps faltered, a hissed curse nearby. Damn it, sirens. Panic laced another voice. How? Nobody knows we're here. Doesn't matter, Silas snarled, urgency replacing amusement. Move, out now. Their retreat was hasty, crashing through the brush, fading into the night. Still, I remained entombed, fear whispering deception. The sirens wailed closer, resolving into the crunch of tires on the dirt track, the slam of car doors. Official voices called out, identifying themselves. Law enforcement. Even then, I hesitated, coiled tight, until a beam of light pierced my log's darkness, and a calm voice inquired, "Ma'am? Police, can you hear me? You're safe. We're here." Unfolding stiff, agonizing limbs, I emerged from the rotting wood. A uniformed woman steadied me, draping a coarse blanket over my trembling shoulders. It's over. You're all right, she murmured, guiding me towards the flashing lights of an ambulance. Got a call. Anonymous. About some trouble out this way. Good timing. While medics assessed scratches and bruises, the story unfolded. Silas and his companions were known predators. Their reign of terror finally curtailed by my desperate flight and that unknown caller. Later, cocooned in the sterile quiet of the police station, recounting the nightmare, the chilling proximity of becoming another vanished face settled deep in my bones. The night left its marks, etched onto skin and psyche alike. Yet, beneath the trauma, a harder core remained. I had faced the abyss and clawed my way back. Stepping out into the fragile dawn, the air clean and cool, I carried a new, grim certainty. Whatever life threw my way now, I would endure. The forest hadn't broken me. It had forged me. His eyes glimpsed in the tarnished square of the rearview mirror. That precise instant, I understood the depth of our error. A chasm opening beneath us. Something fractured resided there. A glacial emptiness that spiderwebbed cold along my vertebrae. But the knowledge bloomed too late. We were already cocooned within his truck's cab. The highway, a receding memory. Adrift in a vastness that offered no quarter, no escape. It began under a sky of flawless turquoise. A day spun from pure possibility. Clara and I, tracing the sun-scorched arteries of the southwest, our chariot a valiant rust-kissed sedan. 2 years we'd been orbiting each other. This journey, our shared exhale. 3 weeks snatched from the jaws of routine before the mundane reclaimed us. Trouble announced itself somewhere deep in Nevada's indifferent expanse. The highway stretched, a vacant ribbon shimmering through heat haze, when an ominous percussion began beneath us, a metallic chatter disrupting the engine's drone. I tried tuning it out, amplifying the radio's static-laced optimism, assuring Clara it was likely phantom noise. Then tendrils of smoke, pale against the asphalt, began to writhe from under the hood. Cursing softly, I guided the car onto the shoulder's gravelly embrace. Clara's gaze met mine, shadowed with worry, as I climbed out into the oppressive heat. Lifting the hood unleashed a plume of acrid vapor, stinging my eyes, clawing at my throat. Coughing, I waved it away, peering into the greasy labyrinth. Mechanical knowledge wasn't my forte, yet the devastation was undeniable. A catastrophic rupture. Oil slicked everything, iridescent and grim. "What is it?" Clara stood beside me, her voice taut. I could only shake my head. "Whatever it is, we're not going anywhere." Our eyes scanned the horizon, east and west. Only desert answered, immense and indifferent, baked under the late afternoon sun. An hour, maybe more, since another vehicle had crossed our path. So what do we do? Panic frayed the edges of her voice. My phone confirmed the expected. No service. A digital ghost town. We wait, I managed, injecting a confidence I didn't possess. Hope someone comes along. We perched on the cooling metal of the hood, silent witnesses to the sun's slow bleed towards the horizon. An hour dissolved, then another. The desert exhaled its stored heat, the air growing teeth as twilight deepened. Still, nothing. "We can't just stay here," Clara murmured, arms wrapped around herself against the nascent chill. It'll be freezing soon. Just as I considered a desperate trek for a phantom signal, twin beams pierced the gloom. Headlights approaching from the direction we traveled. Relief surged potent and sudden as I scrambled up, waving frantically. The truck decelerated, pulling onto the shoulder ahead. An old pickup, scarred by miles and labor, coated in a uniform layer of ochre dust. The driver's side door creaked open, disgorging a man. Tall, sinewy, etched by sun and time, 50s perhaps, with a weathered topography for skin and a sparse grizzled beard. He wore denim worn pale and a flannel shirt, incongruous in the day's lingering warmth. "Got yourselves in a spot?" His voice was raspy, carrying easily in the stillness. I nodded. "Car gave up the ghost? Been stranded for hours." He ambled over, cast a cursory glance under the hood, and delivered the verdict with the slow shake of his head. "She ain't moving without a tow. Nearest town's a good 60 miles back the way you came." My stomach plummeted. 60 miles. An impossible distance on foot, especially as night unfurled its dark cloak. He seemed to anticipate my despair. "Can give you a lift if you need. Heading that way myself." My gaze sought Clara's. Hesitation flickered in her eyes, a primal caution warring with our predicament. Hitching a ride with a stranger in this desolation, it violated every ingrained rule of self-preservation. Yet, the alternative? That would be incredible, I heard myself say. "Thank you." We retrieved our backpacks, the meager anchors of our journey, and climbed into the truck's cab. The air hung thick with stale cigarette smoke and another, less identifiable odor. He introduced himself as Silas, easing the truck back onto the asphalt. Initially, the conversation flowed easily enough. Small talk, our trip, our origins, but unease began to germinate, insidious and unwelcome. The way his eyes, flinty and assessing, kept snagging on Clara in the rearview mirror. How his sentences sometimes frayed at the edges, drifting off as if snagged by some internal snag. And that smell, the one I couldn't place, it intensified, metallic, faintly sour. It tugged at a half-forgotten memory, unsettlingly familiar. Perhaps half an hour had slipped by when Silas abruptly veered off the highway, bumping onto an unpaved track barely discernible in the encroaching dark. "Shortcut," he offered, catching my bewildered expression. "Shave off some time." A protest formed, a plea to stay on the main road, but something in his flat tone, a subtle finality, silenced me. Clara's hand found mine, her fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. The dirt track bucked and jolted beneath us, a tortuous path through the monochrome desert, illuminated only by the truck's bouncing headlight beams. Silas had fallen silent now, his attention seemingly welded to the rutted path ahead. 10 minutes later, maybe 15, he braked before a silhouette against the bruised twilight sky. An old gas station, skeletal and abandoned. Windows blindly boarded, a sign listing precariously, its faded lettering illegible. "Gotta drain the lizard," Silas announced, cutting the engine's rumble. "Be right back." He exited, the door slamming with unnerving finality. The instant he vanished around the building's corner, Clara turned to me, her eyes wide, pupils dilated with rising fear. "Leo, we have to get out." "Now," she whispered, fierce and urgent. "This isn't right." My mouth was sandpaper. "I know," I rasped. "But where? Look around us." Before she could formulate a reply, a sound sliced through the heavy silence, freezing the blood in my veins. A muffled cry, choked off, emanating from within the derelict structure. We held our breath, straining. It came again, clearer this time. A woman's voice, sharp with terror. "Oh God," Clara breathed. "Someone's in there." My hand instinctively reached for the door handle, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But before my fingers closed around the cold metal, Silas was back, sliding behind the wheel, a disconcerting half-smile playing on his lips. "All set," he declared, unnervingly cheerful. Onward. I met Clara's terrified gaze. A minuscule nod passed between us, an unspoken pact. We couldn't drive away, not now. "Actually," I began, striving for a steady tone, "I could use the facilities myself. Mind if I just—" Silas's smile evaporated. "No need. We're nearly there." "Please," I pressed, desperation sharpening my voice. "Just a second." For a tense beat, I expected refusal, a wall of denial. Then a shrug, deceptively casual. "Suit yourself, just make it snappy." My legs felt like hollow reeds as I pushed the truck door open and stepped onto the cracked earth, walking towards the gas station's shadowed bulk. Behind me, Silas's door opened again. "I'll come along," he said, his voice too close, too watchful. "Make sure you don't get turned around." Panic, cold and electric, jolted through me. I reached the nearest door, fumbled with the handle, locked tight. "Round back," Silas directed, his presence a heavy weight at my shoulder. I spun to face him, my back pressing against the rough, splintered wood. "I heard someone," I said, shedding all pretense. "Screaming. What the hell is going on?" His features contorted, twisting into a feral snarl. "Should have kept your nose out of it, boy." He lunged, startlingly fast for his age. I ducked instinctively, felt his fingers rake through my hair. Adrenaline surged. I shoved him, hard, using his momentum against him. He stumbled back, cursing. "Clara!" I roared. "Run!" Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her leap from the truck, a pale blur of terror against the gloom. Silas recovered quickly, bellowing obscenities, launching himself after me. I reached Clara, grabbed her hand, and pulled her into the unforgiving darkness of the open desert. We ran blindly, stumbling over unseen rocks, tearing through brittle scrub brush. Behind us, the heavy crashing sounds of Silas's pursuit, disturbingly close. Clara tripped, a sharp cry escaping her lips as she went down. I hauled her upright, but the momentary pause was all he needed. He hit me from behind like a freight train, driving the air from my lungs as we slammed into the hard-packed earth. I writhed beneath his weight, struggling to break his hold, but he was wiry strength and grim determination, pinning me effortlessly. "Get off him!" Clara shrieked. I saw her snatch up a rock, hefting it, bringing it down with desperate force against the side of Silas's head. He grunted, a guttural sound of pain and surprise, and rolled off me. I scrambled to my feet, sucking in ragged breaths. Silas was already pushing himself up, a dark rivulet of blood tracing a path down his temple. "You'll pay for that," he growled. The menace absolute. His hand dipped into his pocket, emerging with a knife, its blade catching the faint starlight, wickedly curved. He advanced, slow, deliberate, time warped, stretching thin. My eyes darted around wildly, searching for a weapon, anything. Then, a glint of metal, half swallowed by the sand near a clump of sagebrush. A pipe? Rebar. No time to discern. Just metal. Heavy. I dove for it as Silas lunged towards Clara. My fingers closed around the cold, rough cylinder. Without conscious thought, fueled by pure instinct, I swung. A sickening thud echoed in the vast silence as metal met bone. Silas collapsed, boneless, a discarded puppet. For a long moment, only the sound of our ragged breathing filled the night. Silas lay utterly still at our feet. A strange numbness enveloped me, my mind struggling to bridge the gap between the last few minutes and reality. Clara's voice, sharp and clear, cut through the fog. "Leo, we have to go. Check the station, now." Nodding, the heavy pipe still gripped tight in my trembling hand, I agreed. The station. We approached the building with agonizing caution. The back door, as Silas had indicated, was secured with a thick rusty padlock. I brought the pipe down on it again and again, the jarring impacts echoing my own internal tremors, until the metal shackle yielded. The interior air was stagnant, thick with dust and neglect. We fumbled along the wall until our fingers found a switch. Fluorescent tubes overhead flickered, sputtered, then cast a harsh, sterile light on a scene dredged from the deepest recesses of nightmare. Cages lined the room, and inside those cages, some horrors defy description, staining the mind indelibly. We got them out, we freed them. From an ancient landline phone coated in dust, we summoned the world back to this forsaken place. Police cruisers materialized out of the darkness, followed by ambulances, their flashing lights painting the desert in frantic strokes of red and blue. Eventually, the stern-faced efficiency of the FBI arrived. They pieced together the story later, told us Silas had been a shadow haunting these lonely stretches for years, that we'd inadvertently ripped the scab off something far larger, far darker than we could comprehend. They used words like heroes, but sleep offers no refuge. In dreams, Silas's eyes still find me in the rearview mirror, cold and depthless. The metallic sour tang still coats my tongue, and the question lingers, sharp as broken glass. How many others like him drift along the desolate highways, patiently waiting for the next engine to fail, the next traveler to be stranded? Clara and I, we don't drive those open roads anymore. Some paths, once traveled, leave scars too deep to ever truly fade. You can never really go back.